The old book, you know? Yeah. True.
Somebody want to, you're the only one here doing this, somebody want on the agenda to speak about?
That would be fantastic.
Which one?
How about the shop local resolution 2021-18?
Yeah, 2021-18. So you want to move that to D1?
Thank you.
Seeing at 6 p.m., I'd like to call the March 17th, 2021 regular meeting of the Kenai City Council order. I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening, and if you would, or able, would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel.
Here.
Councilmember Askin.
Here.
Councilmember Glendenning.
Here.
Councilmember Nackstedt.
Here.
Vice Mayor Malloy.
Here.
Councilmember Petty.
Here.
Councilmember Winger. Here. Mayor Gabriel, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Before we get to agenda approval, I'd like to call your attention to a laydown you should have in front of you with requested revisions to the agenda packet. Action, add item J1, City Manager's Report, Fiscal Year 2021 Efficiencies Report, requested by the City Manager. Pleasure of council. Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Move to approve the agenda with the requested revisions to the agenda packet listed by the mayor, and to amend it by moving item D6, resolution number 2021-18 to D1.
Second. Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Next, we have the consent agenda. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you. I move for approval of the consent agenda and request unanimous consent.
A second.
Is there anybody on the body that would like to amend the consent agenda at this time? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to please read that into the record.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Tonight on your consent agenda, you have approval of the regular meeting minutes of March 3rd, 2021, approval of bills to be ratified, approval of purchase orders over $15,000, and introduction of ordinance 3196-2021, accepting and appropriating federal funds from the Institute of Museum and Library Services passed through the state of Alaska State Library for employee training, with a public hearing on April 7th. Introduction of ordinance number 3197-2021, amending Kenai Municipal Code section 23.50.010, employee classification, to amend the class, title, and range to include a capital projects manager, with a public hearing on April 7th. Introduction of ordinance number 3198-2021, amending Kenai Municipal Code section 1.15.130, telephonic participation, to provide for the remote electronic participation, with a public hearing on April 7th. Introduction of ordinance number 3199-2021, conditionally waiving certain provisions of Title 17, Public Utilities and Enterprises, related to penalty and interest and shutoff for non-payment of fees for water and sewer utility customers that certified to the city that they were impacted by COVID-19 pursuant to the city manager's executive order number 2 during the effective period of the city's emergency disaster declaration, with a public hearing on April 7th. Introduction of ordinance number 3200-2021, accepting and appropriating an amendment to a COVID CARES Act for older adults and their caregivers 2021 grant passed through the state of Alaska for Kenai Senior Center expenditures in support of its response to the COVID-19 public health emergency, with a public hearing on April 7th. And introduction of ordinance number 3201-2021, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the airport fund and appropriating funds in the airport snow removal equipment capital project fund for the purchase of snow removal equipment, multi-purpose broom/blower, with a public hearing on April 7th. And that's your consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to any item that is on the consent agenda, which was just read into the record? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. Next up, we have unscheduled public comments. Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to address the council at this time on any item that is not on the agenda or consent agenda? Seeing none, we have no, scheduled public, that was unscheduled public comments, which brings us to item D1, public hearings, and we've just moved up to the agenda approval. Resolution number 2021-18, authorizing an amendment of the Shop Local Economic Stimulus Program to extend the dates of the program and authorizing the city manager to execute an amendment to the professional services agreement with the Kenai Chamber of Commerce and Visitor Center for administration of the program. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Axton.
Thank you. I move to adopt Resolution 2021-18.
Second?
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2021-18? Mr. Bannock?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, Mr. City Manager. First off, thank you for your graciousness in changing the agenda around. Part of what I'm going to talk about tonight is I will apologize in advance because I'm going to try to leave as quickly as possible because at job one, it is very busy. I'm here tonight to support this resolution and with your permission, Mr. Mayor, offer a small suggestion, if allowed, to the Shop Here All Year in Kenai Shop Local program. First off, please accept my thanks on behalf of job number one for this program. Our ownership made a commitment to the program to maximize its benefit for the recipient by bonusing an additional 30% to the program. That is why, undoubtedly, we're seeing so many of the vouchers, including perhaps tonight. Next, please allow me to offer my thanks and pass on my thanks to the Kenai Chamber of Commerce for their swift administration of this program. I had reason to do business at their office today, and as I was standing in line, there were several customers in front of me that were there to obtain their vouchers. The staff was courteous, prompt, extremely helpful when answering a wide variety of questions. Nice job, Kenai Chamber of Commerce. Your money is well spent there. Finally, coming from a major recipient of the current program, I would urge this body to give consideration to the other program, the one that you, Mr. Mayor, sponsored just several weeks ago. I understand that due to the great need locally, that program has expired. Perhaps the two programs could be merged into one, or alternatively, funding could be appropriated or reappropriated from this program. Thank you again for your graciousness. Thank you for hearing us, and thank you for this program.
Any questions of Mr. Bannock? Comments? Councilmember Weir.
I just wanted to say thank you for coming in. I know you have a busy night, so I just wanted to say thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Councilmember Glendenning.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yeah, thank you for broaching the subject of the groceries. I'm just overwhelmed with the response that we got, the positive response that I've heard, and perhaps there is some way we can put our thinking caps on and recreate some version of it. And my wishes and dreams, maybe those people that were gathering up their receipts and ran out of time. I mean, we burned through 200 grand in 9 days. Maybe find a way to honor their potential contribution to just some thoughts. And thank you, Dwayne.
Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate your comments, Mr. Bannock, and also especially your feedback on Kenai Chamber. Appreciate hearing that. Thank you.
Councilmember Axton.
Yeah, I too appreciate your kind words for the council here and the chamber, and good to hear that the chamber is doing a good job. When I was down there, I kind of saw the same thing. Appreciate that, and it's unfortunate that the shop local did run out of money so quickly, but it did extend into every part of the state or the country, anybody that wanted to come into our city. So it's unfortunate that those city residents that weren't able to turn in their receipts for vouchers weren't able to. So it might be something we want to look at, moving forward. We do have a fiduciary responsibility to the citizens of our city. So, but I do appreciate that, and it was a very successful program all around.
May I
Mr.
follow
Mayor?
up with that?
Yes,
Mr. Mayor?
absolutely.
Mr. Naxted, no disagreement. And so, part of the point that I would like to make in being here tonight is I'm gonna kind of brag. I think Louise is still the #1 recipient, I think. It seemed like it, based on some of the numbers. We are willing, I speak for Uptown Motel when I say, we are willing to take a program that we are doing very well on, and we are willing to say, if that program still has, it looks like in excess of $200,000, if that program were to shrink and the other program that we don't participate in were to grow, you would have our support for that.
Yeah, just to follow up, because I'm just interested to maybe get your thoughts on this too, because when I sponsored that ordinance, it was the primary purpose was to benefit Kenai residents who needed to buy groceries that were extended outside the municipal boundaries to anybody as council member next. And if you don't care to respond to this, I just was wondering where you stood on the city resident versus everybody, because there's a purpose behind the legislation that you enact, and the shop local, the purpose for that was to provide that stimulus to businesses impacted by COVID. This one was Kenai residents, and it turned out to be everybody. So, and like I said, you don't have to answer if you don't. I'm just curious to get your whether you're supportive of identical or would rather see it limited to Kenai residents.
So we're speaking of the other program.
The groceries, yes.
Grocery program. I would tell you, we would have no formal opinion other than to say, while I refer to this as the greater city of Kenai compared to other lesser cities, it was reminded to me that the funding for which this program came is the United States of America. So while I'm all about protecting 7,000 of my friends and neighbors first and foremost, honestly, Mr. Mayor, I don't think there's a wrong answer if you chose to limit it to the city of Kenai, because this is the money that was appropriated to you. If you chose to expand it to a citizen of the United States of America for whence the funds came.
Yeah, and like I said, it was just curiosity, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but we're collecting data. That program ran out of money. The money was exhausted. So once we get that data, we'll have a better idea of exactly where those vouchers were who they were given to, and I'm curious to see what percentage of those were Kenai residents, because if there's Kenai residents that didn't get to take advantage, that would be a shame.
Perhaps I could just sum it up like this. One answer is good answer. The other answer is a great answer. I won't tell you which one is which. There is no wrong answer here.
Fair enough. Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you. Just another quick comment. I'm also pleased to hear that your business did so well in the Shop Local program, because your industry was one of the ones locally that was shut down by mandates. So, and for quite some time. So we know that you had a more significant impact than some other businesses. So I'm pleased to hear that the program benefited your business, and thank you for that feedback.
Thank you.
Enjoy your evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your time.
Is there anybody else from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2021-18? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council.
If anybody's on Zoom
sorry.
and you want to speak to resolution 2021-18, which is the authorizing the amendment of the Shop Local Economic Stimulus Program, you can use the raise hand feature.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no others wishing to testify to this resolution, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation from council.
Request
Councilmember.
unanimous consent.
Very good. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Oh, gotta turn my head here once in a while. Mr. Oceaner.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Obviously not an objection, but I did want to take this opportunity to provide council with an update on the Shop Local program. As of today, the total vouchers that have been sent out for the program is $135,050. So we have seen a significant uptick over the last couple of weeks. With this extension, as of today, the program's about 6 weeks old. If we added this extension, it would provide for an additional 6 weeks. According to the chamber, things have actually increased here even recently. So it's likely that over the course of the next month, we will get really close to the $300,000 that the program has to use up all of the funds. I also did want to say that before you vote on this, I wanted to make sure that you knew that in discussions with the chamber, if the Shop Local program is extended, they do not feel comfortable running both programs. So administratively, running both was too much for their staff. So if they're going to continue to run the Shop Local program, they would not be willing or able to support the grocery program going forward.
Councilmember Glendenning. Councilmember Petty, sorry.
This is a question for the city manager. If the two programs did not run concurrently, would the chamber consider running them separately at different times?
Mr. Ostrander.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Petty, the concern of theirs was both of them at the same time. And I didn't ask that question, so I can't speak specifically to that. I know as they get closer to their fundraiser in May and some of the other summer programs that they're going to be working on, that they are going to shift gears, but their main concern was running both of them at the same time. So it may be that they would be willing to extend one or the other beyond the end of April.
Councilmember Winger.
This would be a question for Paul. Is there a way that we'd be able to merge these programs? I find it a little disheartening that we wouldn't want to extend that program further for our residents once we collect data that Mr. Gabriel had spoke about. I do find that a little disheartening that they wouldn't want to continue to administer both programs. So what is the likelihood that we can merge these to still provide that to our citizens?
Mr. Ostrander.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Winger, again, that's not a question that I asked them. At the current funding levels, like I said, I think that the majority of these funds will be used through the Shop Local program. So to combine the programs, add groceries, you would have to appropriate additional dollars. If you were to do that, I would guess that the amount of effort on the part of the chamber would be similar as if they were two separate programs with separate appropriations. So again, I didn't ask that question. I think they probably, I should say likely, would have the same concerns.
Did we have a soft landing in place on this program? Because there was a lot of people that just seemed to collect receipts, struggling families that seemed to collect receipts, and then were basically went to turn it in to help themselves out, and now they're eating that without the additional support or help. So there was no advertisement on a day-to-day basis that this is how much money we've got out, this is how much we have left. So ultimately, as a city body, we've left a lot of our people kind of hanging in the wind, eating these expenses. So what is our plan? Are we just going to tell them, sorry, nothing we can do going forth?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Winger, it happened so quickly. I know they had to shut it down quickly because they ran out of funds. We are talking about some of the data that we have that shows who benefited from this program, and we do have some preliminary data on that. And the preliminary data shows that about 24% of the beneficiaries actually were Kenai residents. We had beneficiaries from as far away as Kansas City, Missouri. So I would argue that the biggest issue and the reason why we may have Kenai residents that were unable to get vouchers is because people from outside the city got the vouchers before they were able.
Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you. So just to follow up on that, my hope would be that, and I'm I assume the city manager's viewing it a similar way, is that, with the data, that in our first meeting in April, we'll have some options regarding, another version of this program should the council, choose to go forward with it, because, I also heard from, like we got emails from people, but I also heard from Kenai residents verbally that that were kind of closed out early from participating in the program. And so, and like you do with other things with options, and there may be options with the chamber, and there may be options without the chamber. So I'm certainly looking forward to hearing that. Thank you.
Councilman Glendenning.
Yeah, two things. Is one, some observation that I heard is perhaps this program was plussed up quite a bit with the 1-to-1 ratio. And if they had a, say like the Shop Here All Year, where you spend $100, you get a $50 voucher, that may have, would have had the advantage of prolonging the grocery offering. But secondly, in our negotiations, good faith negotiations with the chamber, they should have some idea of man-hours spent at the counter, and could it be in our negotiations with them that maybe a couple temporary staff could be hired just to handle those applications that come in. It looks like naturally when people come in the door, they form naturally two lines, and perhaps have some individuals that could be dedicated to a grocery program should we decide to go on. I understand that they have their big fundraisers coming up and other initiatives for the summer, so it's a dicey management proposal on everybody's part. But I would wholeheartedly support and ask that we consider doing another version of this grocery program.
Yeah, we're kind of getting off of what's on the floor here. We're sort of deliberating the grocery ordinance when we should be talking about the contract to extend with the chamber. And I'm not saying that's not.
Point of order, it was mentioned that the two could not be combined. I'm just trying to offer a path forward
Right.
so we can go ahead with both programs. Thank you.
I think that, another point is that there's, stimulus checks coming up. This is referring to what's on the floor, the extension of the grocery program, is that, folks are probably going to have, once this, the recent bill that was passed by the federal government, once that sounds like that money will be out pretty quickly, people getting tax refunds, that sort of thing, that I suspect there'll be an uptick in the shop local programs. People look to extend those dollars. So it'll be interesting to see this might be burned up even before the 6 weeks extension. So at any rate, Councilmember Naxton.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, and that's kind of the soft landing. I mean, the $1,400, if you use like 80%, which is kind of a national average, which other people would get it, it's about $8 million just in the city of Kenai, coming into people's pockets that probably mostly benefiting from what we're not talking about. But anyway, that is coming into our city, and plus there was a whole lot of other programs as well that benefit folks through that whole program that I haven't gotten my whole head around, but it's just other monies in. So right now, as unfortunate as it is, there is a cushion and a carry through for a while.
Well, so. And I'd make another comment, but I just contradict myself about how we shouldn't be commenting on it. I know it's on the floor. So,
because now is the time.
Point of order. Yeah, point of order. Is there any other discussion on resolution number 2021-18? Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2021-18 is adopted. Thank you, Council. Next up we have, thank you, Mr. Maddock. Next up we have item D2, ordinance number 3195-2021, accepting and appropriating funds in the airport fund and accepting grants from the Federal Aviation Administration under the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriation Act 2021. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Axton.
I move to enact ordinance 3195-2021.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public or online that would like to speak to ordinance number 3195-2021?
Anybody that wants to speak can use the raise hand feature.
Seeing no one, bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation from council? Councilmember Axton.
I just want to say it's great to get $1.3 million into the airport like that. Although I'd like to ask, just for the record, Mr. Ostrander, if you might just, what can these funds be used for at the airport? I think it's in our ordinance, the resolution.
Mr. Ostrander.
Yeah, through the mayor, Councilmember Naxted. So it's broken into two buckets. There's almost $1.3 million that can be used for operational expenses at the airport. So really any expenses that the city has to operate the airport. And then there's a smaller bucket of just over $20,000 that provides relief from rent and minimum annual guarantees for our lessees, our concessionaires at the airport. So the car rental, the restaurant, the cafe, that sort of thing. It's to help offset or provide relief to those folks for their minimum rental guarantees.
Any other deliberation from council? Seeing none, clerk, oh, sorry, Councilmember Glendinning.
Just a quick question. Do we still have businesses that use our airport that provide airplane tours that may be impacted come summertime from COVID concerns? It's a forward-looking question, but is that something that we could consider in this distribution of money?
Mr. Ostrander.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Glendinning, we do have several businesses that do offer flight scene services and such from the airport. These funds would not be allowed to offset any costs associated with them. This is strictly for concessionaires within the terminal or for operational expenses of the airport itself.
Thank you.
Any other comments, deliberation? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
Councilmember Glendinning?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxtet?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Malloy?
Yes.
Councilmember Petty?
Yes.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Council, we're on item D3, resolution number 2021-14, further extending the disaster emergency declaration for the city of Kenai made on March 8th, 2020 in response to the COVID-19 health emergency. Pleasure, council. Councilman Winger.
I'd like to make a motion to amend it to May 31st.
Well, we need to move it on
Oh,
the
I'm
floor
sorry.
first because we have to have public comment. So you
Okay,
can just
sorry.
vote to adopt it or move to adopt it if you would.
I'll move to adopt resolution 2021-14.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to resolution number 2021-14?
You can use the raise hand feature if you're on Zoom.
Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Councilmember Winger.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to amend the date ending May 31st.
Second for 2021.
Yes.
Okay, hang on, let me see if I need that. Sorry, my iPad's not cooperating. Okay, so what, just so I'm clear on that, what was that again, Ms. Winger?
I'd like to make a motion to amend the date to ending on May 31st, 2021.
Very good. I have a second. Any discussion?
Request unanimous consent.
So I just wondered why I wonder why there was not the last day of the month that was recommended. I guess that's a question for the city manager.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Vice Mayor Malloy. If that amendment is to pass, the last whereas would need to be changed to extend it for 61 days. We just extended it for 60 days, which happened to fall on May 30th. If you want to change to May 31st, you would have to extend it by 61 days, and the last whereas would have to be modified as well.
Okay, so, Leah, let's get through this amendment first, and then, we can do that if it passes. Any other discussion on the amendment? Unanimous consent was requested. Oh, Councilmember, or Vice Mayor Lai?
I guess that what we're, no, I'm sorry, I don't. I thought I had interpreted. Well, okay, I had interpreted Councilmember Winger's a motion as amending it every date, every May 30 in the ordinance, rather than having to do each one individually. But there's one in section 1, and the city manager pointed out that there's one in the last whereas. So,
Yeah, section 1
so
also.
I don't know, maybe it's a question for the city
Oh,
clerk.
I see, to
Would
do
the-
all
would
of
the-
them.
Would the motion amend
Yeah,
both?
do
or-
all three, yeah.
You know, because she wanted to change the date to May 31. Would that effectively, change it throughout the ordinance?
Yeah, I see, because if we couldn't pass the ordinance without the associated change. Ms. Winger, would you restate your motion to cover the last whereas to May 31st, and also the the first sentence in section 1?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to amend the first section, in section 1, May 30th to May 31st of 2021. I would also like to make a motion to amend the last whereas to state May 31st, 2021.
Second, and
Yeah,
request unanimous
I
consent.
just need to get concurrence of the second.
Yes, I do, and I guess I'm
Okay.
requesting unanimous consent.
Okay, very good. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment passes. We now have resolution number 2021-14 as amended before us. Further discussion? Councilman Warrior?
Yes. I know at the previous meeting, I stated that this would be the last time I would be extending the emergency declaration. Upon talking with some of our senators and our House representatives, I would be inclined to extending this to May 31st, because at that time, we would see school would be out of session. We'll have more people vaccinated at that point. But as of May 31st, I will not be voting to extend this again. Thank you.
Ms. Hines?
We still need to amend the last whereas to indicate 61 days.
Yeah. Oh, I think she just changed the date.
She
Yeah,
did.
she did. Yeah. Yeah.
She redid her motion, and we indicated May 31st in both section 1 and the last whereas, but I did not hear the 61 days being amended to 61.
Oh, 6-1, yes.
Because it actually does say 60 days. We'd have to amend that to 61 days.
So have we already passed the one?
We have.
And we just need to do
We just
the
need,
one more?
anybody can make an amendment to just change that too, because we've changed the date. We just need to change the numerical number of days. But,
Okay,
yes, everybody's lights on, so I'll go with Councilmember Winger. Shoots her.
I'd like to make a motion to amend to 61 days.
second, and request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection, Councilmember, or Councilmember Glendinning?
Not an objection, but just some housekeeping here in the city manager's memo. If we go down to the last paragraph, there's also another May 30th that's lurking, and maybe just the clerk could take care of that in the Scribner era. And by extending the emergency declaration to May 30th, I mean now 31st, would allow administration to continue on and on and on. So just a point of order.
Councilmember,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Hines.
Mayor Gabriel, the memos don't, when it's a program and a program is attached as a document, it's attached to the legislation. This is just a memo explaining it, so it isn't related at all to the actual legislation. And so the legislation can be amended without changing the memo.
Yeah, and the minutes will reflect that it was as amended, so that would make
Okay,
the
I just offered
change.
it for clarity for the record.
Any further discussion on resolution number 2021-14 as amended?
Request unanimous consent is amended.
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2021-14 is adopted. Next, we have resolution number 2021-15, approving development incentives for Kenai Municipal Code 21.10.100 for lease and airport reserve lands between the City of Kenai and Alaska Air Fuel Incorporated on 2.52 plus or minus acre portion of Lot 5 FBO subdivision number 8. Councilmember Axon.
Thank you. I move to adopt Resolution 2021-15.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that or online that would like to speak resolution number 2021-15?
You can use the raise hand feature if you're on Zoom.
Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Councilmember Axon.
Yeah, thank you. I'd request that the city manager, if it's okay with the body, not only talk about this resolution, but the following resolution. And then we have an action item too. They're all related. And just to kind of bring it all together, we can discuss each one later, but I think that helps. So it's not so disjointed.
Mr. Ostrander.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Naxted. So there are 3 pieces of legislation that are related to this same lease. So Alaska Air Fuel got approval from council to enter a lease with the city for this property last year. They're approaching the 1-year deadline for execution of that lease, and what's holding it up right now is that the subdivision plat, although it's been approved by our Planning and Zoning Commission, now has to go to the borough for their approval. Likely approval sometime in the next 30 to 60 days, probably more likely in the 60-day time period. So there's a couple things that address that are in your packet. One, Alaska Air Fuel wants to immediately begin work on the property. However, they don't have a property right to it right now. So the special use permit that's in the packet, which is an action approval item, will give them a property right that will allow them to go in and start development of the property. Then the second part that you'll see is actually the next resolution that's coming up, which is an extension of the period where they can sign that lease, which again is necessary because the plat has not been finalized. So that will extend it for 6 months until October 1st, I believe. The SUP will allow them to get on the property immediately. As soon as the plat is recorded, they'll sign the lease. The SUP will go away, and then they'll enter the lease. The development incentives here are only applicable once the lease is signed. So that's what this resolution is. So they are all tied together, and it's really our attempt to try to get them on the property earlier than the lease would allow, but still allow them to enter the lease when the subdivision plat is completed. Once that is done, then they would be eligible for the development incentives that are in front of you right now.
Thank you, Mr. Ostrander. Is there any further discussion on resolution number 2021-15?
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2021-15 is adopted. Next, we have resolution number 2021-16, approving an application extension until October 8, 2021, per municipal code, Kenai Municipal Code 2.21.10.050 for Alaska Air Fuel Incorporated for a 2.52 plus or minus acre portion of Lot 5 FPO subdivision number 8. Councilmember Naxton.
Move to adopt Resolution 2021-16.
Second?
Is there anybody online or that would like to speak to resolution number 2021-16?
You can use the raise hand feature on Zoom.
Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation from council.
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2021-16 is adopted. Next up, we have item D6, resolution number 2021-17, authorizing a budget transfer within the general fund buildings division for professional services as a result of a personnel vacancy. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Askin.
I move that we adopt resolution number 2021-17.
I'll
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2021-17?
On Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature.
Thank you. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation from council? Seeing
Request
none,
unanimous consent.
thank you. Unanimous consent has been requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2021-17 is adopted. Next up, we have item D7, resolution number 2021-19, authorizing agreement for professional engineering services to begin assessments for the master plan for water and sewer facilities and equipment. Pleasure of council. Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I'll move to adopt resolution number 2021-19.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2021-19?
And again, on Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature.
Seeing no one, bring it back to council. Is there any discussion, comments from council? Councilman Glendenning.
Yeah, just a comment. I see that this resolution is a continuation of the discussion that we've had regarding the upgrades and efficiencies regarding our water sewer facilities. And of course, I wholeheartedly support this. And I just giving compliments for the sequential and on point updates to our development of this program, and kudos to the Public Works Director. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Vice Mayor Malloy.
Requesting unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Councilman Glendenning, is your light on? Okay, no problem. Seeing no objection to unanimous consent, resolution number 2021-19 is adopted. That brings us to item G9, action approval, special use permit to Alaska Air Fuel Incorp. For office, parking, and utilities. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Axton.
Thank you. I move that we approve the special use permit to Alaska Air Fuel, Inc. for office parking and utilities as outlined in the packet.
I'll second that.
Any discussion among council?
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, that action is approved. Special use permit to Alaska Air Fuel. Next up, we have item G10, COVID-19 response. Mr. Osterner.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. The city has one employee in the COVID protocol right now. There's one individual hospitalized at CPH. Kenai Fire Department held a vaccination clinic at the Beacon Building last Saturday. I did volunteer at that to help support the event, so I was able to observe during the 5-hour event, and I got to tell you, I'm proud of our Kenai Fire Department staff and their professionalism and their kindness and the respect that they provided all the clinic participants. I think it's really reflects well in the city, and there's a lot of folks that were very thankful of the work that our fire department's done as far as vaccines go. One other item, the senior center. Want to let council know that as of today, we are now providing transportation for medical appointments. It's only going to be Monday through Wednesday. We just don't have the drivers to handle more than that, but just word of mouth, most of those appointments have filled up. The group activities in the center are also increasing participation every week. We're having exercise, morning coffee, weight loss groups, writers groups, bluegrass, council on aging, and senior connections are all meeting there in person. And Kathy is working through the logistics of opening in-house dining soon, hopefully in April. Probably we'll start with some type of reservation to make sure that they can limit capacity, but they are working towards in-house dining for the first time in over a year, starting in April. And that's all I have for COVID, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions of the city manager? Seeing none, we'll move to Item G11, discussion, set meetings for council personnel evaluations. So if you guys would pull out your phone, or I guess what we could do is say, you want to do a doodle poll with that? What works best for you, Ms. Hines, just to do the scheduling? And just,
I'm certainly welcome, happy to send out a doodle poll.
just, well, I guess we can do a rough idea. We usually do these, if I recall right, what is it, around the end of last half of April generally?
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Malloy?
Yeah, and last year was unusual because I think we did, well, I could be wrong. I think we did all three in one day. Usually we do the manager separately from the city attorney and city clerk, and I kind of prefer that. Also, I would like another date. I would like a date that we have to get our evaluations to the mayor, you know, in advance of whatever dates we select for the evaluation. So I would ask that we have that date also.
I was going to throw out, we could probably do one either after or before our council meeting. I mean, we could start, you know, we've done that before. I agree with you. Doing 3 in one night gets a little long. But if we have a council meeting on the April 21st. We might be able to do one on the 21st and then the other two on the 22nd, or the other two the day before. That would give everybody enough time, I think, to get their evaluations back to me so I can kind of cobble those together. Any thoughts?
Any one of those times is fine with me.
Okay.
So I'm pretty good April, so I can go either date. I guess my preference would not to do a council meeting date, you know, just because I think oftentimes the city manager may take 2 hours or more, and the other two would take at least 2 hours, maybe sometimes more too, you know, total. So it would be, unless we were going to do them all separately, you know, then I could see doing one before a council meeting, but I guess I would urge us not to do one before a council meeting.
I agree with what Bob is saying. Either of those dates will work great for me. Unfortunately, Fridays get a little tight for us because we travel for wrestling currently. And tournaments are picking up in the April-May timeframe up in the valley, so I would be out of town on Fridays.
I know it would string 3 nights in a row. Would there be an objection to doing 2 on the 20th, have our council meeting, then do the other one on the 22nd, which is a Thursday?
That works.
Okay, so who do we want to schedule which days? Any preference?
Jamie first and Scott on the first night.
Okay. City clerk, city attorney on the, what day was that, 20th? And then Mr. Ostrander on the 22nd?
And so then do you want us to have our evaluations to you midnight, the 19th?
No,
Or
no,
before that?
absolutely, absolutely not. It's, Miss Brown has really put together a pretty nice streamlined system, but. No, you send them to me, but, and I'll compile them, and then and I think I did ask Miss Brown to reach out to our newest members here and sort of explain the process. So I would say if you could have those to me by, what day is today, the 17th, around the 1st of the month, would that, or around, I would say the 5th. That's kind of splits the time between now and then, so I'll give you half the time to get them done, half the time for me to put them together. Does that work? April 5th?
April 5th would be much better, as I have homeschool reports to have prepared at the end of first of the month, so thank you.
No problem, and if you would, make sure you put your name on them, so I kind of get what, but once I print them off and put them all together, then it's, when I'm going through them, it's
Just one comment on the forms, and I've pretty well done them already. They're electronic, so I'm doing them electronic. But I just wanted to make a comment. I think it was there last time, and I emailed the HR director. But the last field, which is huge, for additional comments, you can only put one line in there in this big blue field of where there's supposed to be lots of words. So I was forced to take that and put it into another section, so I could actually type in there. It is what it is, and I kind of already did it and went to the bottom.
I think I remember something about that.
Yeah, but it's still there. I'm just saying that that's what you're going to find if you're doing it. If you print them out, you can write in there all you want, that's fine. But, it's easy to do it electronically. I can save it and all that, but you can only put one line and then it just disappears. Perhaps before you start, maybe that can get fixed for some of you guys.
Yeah, if I forget what I had to do when I was doing mine, I think I copied it on a Word, or copied it and changed it and then put it in. I can't remember what, but I had to do something weird to get that to work. Vice Mayor Malloy.
And would you and the body like to have these be beginning at 6 p.m. on those dates?
6 p.m. work, everybody? I'm seeing the nod of the head there. Yep, 6 p.m. Well, that was easy.
I see.
I just want to check one thing real quick here. Go ahead.
I see Mr. Ostrander's raising his finger. You may have something to.
Okay, Mr. Ostrander.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. On Councilmember Nackstad's comments, if you would send that form to me, we can revise it. I'm sure it's just there's an error in that form. We should be able to fix it so that it doesn't do what Henry's saying it does.
It does it on all three of them, too.
Okay. Our HR director is out of the office right now, but I could have Christine look at it. If someone can send it to me, I don't have a copy.
Okay, if somebody could pull it up on their email and send it to Mr. Ostrander maybe after the meeting, that would be.
Ms. Hines
or
says
Ms.
she
Hines.
has it, so
Oh.
If you'd like, we can try to work on that tomorrow and then resend it out to council
Perfect.
so that you have a format.
Yeah, it's
that will
better
work.
being frustrated, for sure. Yeah, thank you. All right, well, we're moving, trying to beat Vice Mayor Malloy's record. We got 8 minutes here. Yeah. So that brings us to commission committee reports, Council on Aging.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. We had a in-person Council on Aging meeting on March the 11th. There were a couple of individuals that did participate in Zoom due to some challenges that they were experiencing. If y'all haven't been over there lately, it is a lot of changes and updates that the city can be really proud of. They discussed the new code of conduct and made some implementations on that, and those will be posted in designated locations throughout the center. Tomorrow night will be the first time that the Bluegrass gathering will be occurring, and it will be happening tomorrow afternoon between 2 and 5. And everyone is invited to attend with mask and social distancing. Another thing that was mentioned is they're working on getting sliding glass doors into the Arctic entryway there so as to provide more space for the handicapped individuals getting in and out with walkers and wheelchairs and such. The automatic sliding glass doors will be an added feature that will be greatly beneficial. Also, they're working on a grant for $22,000 for the kitchen, which will help replace a deep fryer, a stainless steel work counter, and then also, in light of the COVID, they're going to be putting a water station. They hope to have water bottles that have a Kenai Senior Center on them, which people can bring and refill to make things more safe and sanitary over there. And also, the Senior Center is going to be celebrating their 50th anniversary, and so they will be planning some celebration for that. that ends my report, and our next meeting will be on April the 8th.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councilmember Patty. Next up, we have Airport Commission.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Airport met on March 11th, and the first thing I reported last month was that everybody was there, and they were all there this last time as well. There was one person absent. Nobody was on Zoom, and very happy to be here. Came in, some were masks and social distance, just like we are, and all that kind of stuff. So that seems to be moving forward. I know it's something we discussed a little bit last time here. They had a discussion item. The Airport Commission would like to put up a couple of signs. Literally, there'd be two at the float pond, and it'd be the same ones that would be over at the transient, which is south of the terminal. We're kind of where the jets park and all of that, and small aircraft. Those signs would consist of basically a satellite image of the city, a larger one, and then a smaller one that kind of is the airport in the immediate area. And with some points of interest. So anybody getting out of their aircraft or whatever would have a sign, and they'd be able to review that and see how far it is to go, and all that kind of stuff. Anybody that goes someplace strange. And I guess I'm a dinosaur because I learned what a QR code is last week, and it took a minute to get that. So that's what those little box things are, which I downloaded an app, and I haven't had an opportunity to use it. Mr. Glendenning, I bet you haven't used it yet either. Just guess.
I have one tattooed.
Okay. Well, can I scan it? But anyway,
It'll cost you.
There'll be that sort of a code on there, and what they would like to have on there is points of interest, and something that Parks and Rec might include. All the parks and where the beach is, and they'd also like to include restaurants. Pilots like to go eat, whatever, but you need to know. And I know that the IT person here with the city was concerned about that and upkeeping it because restaurants change and all that, but phone books change too, and they're kind of hanging there until they get switched out. But they were pretty insistent that be included. I mean, if one restaurant's gone and something else, there'll be another one, and it'll just be there. So anyway, they like to have the two, and so they're kind of still working out on what they're going to include there with that. Mary also pointed out that the snow blower that I think I talked about before that they've been keeping together with baling wire finally bit the dust. That wrote bit the dust, so she must have said that. And you'll see that there's an ordinance for the purchase of a new snow blower in there. It's a very important piece of equipment for the airport. She talked about all the projects the airport has going on and the monies that are being spent for that. So the good thing about that is the FAA is very supportive of this piece of equipment naturally, and there's discretionary funds out there. Discretionary funds are funds that the FAA has kind of floating out there, and it will come in and the airport will be able to use that, and hopefully we won't have to spend a dime. The FAA would pay so much, and the discretionary funds would pay for the rest, or most of it, which they do anyway. So that's, maybe the city manager would have more of the scoop on it. But at any rate, discretionary funds are available for that, and so hopefully that will happen, and hopefully we won't need a snow blower soon at the airport. So that ends the report, and their next meeting is April 8th. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next, at Harbor Commission.
The Harbor Commission meeting was canceled for lack of agenda items in March, and their next meeting is April 12th.
Thank you, Parks and Recreation Commission.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Parks and Rec met on Thursday, March 4th. We went over goals and objectives in that meeting. Some of the goals that they set is doing a scorecard on our parks. That way they can know areas of improvement, projects that need done, or areas that don't need as much attention within our city. Some of the discussion as well came to some of the signs that they're talking about doing on the path behind the Little League field. And going with what Mr. Naxted said, QR codes were suggested to be added to those signs so that if there's a problem at the park, somebody could scan it and it would go directly to an email inbox that would say if there's a vandalism problem, maybe kudos of what we're doing right and kudos of something that we could do better in those specific areas. I have seen that done down in Vegas at some of the parks, so that they can have better enforcement on their local areas, keep them clean and safe for all use. So that was a good input. We really got lost in the weeds talking about the spruce bark beetle problem, what we're going to do as a city going forth on that. As we're looking around, it was mentioned that we have over 300 dead trees on the city's properties that are going to have to be removed. And then speaking with Bob had spoke with somebody and they said roughly within the next year, 80% of all black spruce will be dead. So this is definitely something we're seeing as we look at our doors and windows. We see these trees turning to these ugly brown colors. We had talks about doing some painting and roof repairs at the garden shed, trying to get more people to volunteer and be interested in these projects. They have a kite festival coming up. I'm sorry, I don't have the date in front of me. It hasn't been really set in stone, but they are going to do the kite festival. And then they're also doing an Easter egg hunt, which launched with the QR code as well. So big things with Parks and Recs. Ed has been out grooming our ski trails, and they do look really nice. So while the weather's nice, definitely get out and use them. And we meet again on April 1st.
Thank you. Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. The Planning and Zoning Commission met here on March the 10th, a week ago, and we had consideration of a plat. It was the FBO Subdivision 10 that we discussed tonight in other formats, and that was approved unanimously by the Planning and Zoning Commission. There was a resolution regarding a preliminary plat of Town Site 2021 of, let's see, yeah, the Kenai complex in Old Town. That is their wellness center. And basically what happened is a larger tract was created. There was no discussion other than just an outline from the planning director, and it was, of course, passed unanimously. We had a resolution, a public hearing, for a conditional use permit for breeding and sale of dogs on a property out in Valhalla Heights. And the application was submitted by Laura Pabst. There was a representative from the animal control here who responded favorably that his inspection revealed that this would indeed meet any conditions, any concerns that the city had. There were questions from the Planning and Zoning Commission just as to the nature of the business, the amount of dogs that would be available, and just more or less curious as to how the dog breeding business works in their perspective. And of course, it was passed unanimously also. The next meeting, I believe, is the 24th of this month. And there will be at least one item I know that's on the agenda, and also the planning director is going to start a program. He's going to start with the two newest members that have been appointed, just to try and bring them up to speed as to the workings of the Planning and Zoning Commission. He's going to begin, just thoughts, it's up to him to develop his program, but it's the Title 29, which outlines the roles and responsibilities not only of city councils but of planning commissions. And then also he's going to go into how we make our determinations in planning and zoning. They come from standards that are presented from city code, and then the findings that support those standards. And he's going to begin with Planning and Zoning 101 and review and reiterate the importance of having findings and standards that are consistent with the city code. And I think the Planning and Zoning Commission is off to a good start. It'll be a lot more functional, of course, when we get into June, and they're encouraged to meet here in person and have more vigorous debates, interactions, and actually a refresher training would be how can we say, more efficiently applied and better received. And that ends my report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Glending. How many members did you have present?
Let's see. We had 4, 5 here. One was absent, and the others appeared on Zoom.
Very good, thank you. Next up, we have Beautification.
We haven't had a meeting yet. The next one is scheduled for April 13th.
Thank you. Mini Grant Steering Committee, there is no report. On the report of the mayor, I really don't have much to report. Didn't spend, other than I would like to just say, hope everybody starts enjoying this nice sunshine we're getting later in the day. Now with daylight savings times, even longer in the evening, but springtime's slowly arriving, so get out and enjoy it. City Administration Report, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I want to make sure that council members saw that the efficiencies report is in your laydown packet tonight. Shows a lot of effort on part of virtually every department in the city. It was a little unique this year because we were in the middle of COVID, but I'm really proud of the work that all the departments did throughout the course of the year. Really looking for ways to do things more efficiently, and although the annual savings that we show in this one isn't as much as what we've seen in previous years, I was still very impressed with the amount of annual savings that they were able to come up with, even while they were responding to COVID. I also want to talk to council about the budget work session. You scheduled the evaluations today. The budget work session is in April as well, and the last couple of years we've scheduled just an entire Saturday to go through that. I was hoping that council would be available to do that on the 24th of April. That's the Saturday. We have it scheduled right now between the 12th and the 30th of April, which really only encompasses 2 weekends. The weekend of April 17th is the Homer King Salmon Derby, and I know a couple of your staff are not going to be here, or at least not planning on being here for that weekend, which would bring us to the 24th. If the 24th doesn't work, I think we could potentially even move it to that first weekend in May. So I might suggest we could send out a doodle poll, and Jamie could provide a couple of different options. I think we should get that on the calendar sooner rather than later, so that people, weekends typically fill up quicker than others. So if the council's all right, we can just send out a doodle poll and provide some options and see where that falls.
Councilmember Winger.
I would be unavailable for the first weekend of May as I have state wrestling tournament in the Valley, so we leave the 29th for that, and that's an extended few days. I would be available up to the 24th, but the first week of May I wouldn't be.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I won't be around on the 1st of May, that weekend, most likely, but the 24th works.
Vice Mayor Malloy.
So, I could do the 24th first, and maybe there might be some efficiencies, in the presentation that would save money. But, so it could be 6 hours instead of 8.
Just not, is the 24th good for everybody, just to nod of heads here? I think that works for me too. We're gonna earn our money that week, I guess.
And what time?
Yeah, what we usually shoot for, it's 9, I think is what we usually go for, and so 9 a.m. Yes, and I guess when would we expect to see the budget, Mr. Oshiner?
April 7th.
Okay, very good.
April 7th is the date that we have slated for delivery to council.
Okay.
Okay,
Just real quickly before I get, so Ms. Hines, could you send out just invites for the evaluations and that, so we can get them on everybody's calendar? Thank you.
okay, I wanted to provide an update to council on the business grant program. This is the one council approved several weeks ago that extended our grant programs for those that didn't get fully funded during our first two grant programs. The interest has been more than what I had anticipated. And actually, to date, as council recalls, you appropriated $200,000 for that program. To date, we've received 228,000 in applications that are eligible. So we've actually exceeded the amount that was appropriated. So administration is going to be providing what is essentially an emergency ordinance to council at your next meeting. So we'll be asking for introduction and hearing at the same meeting to appropriate whatever that additional amount is to complete and to make the payouts to all those businesses that we weren't able to pay. The program closes March 22nd, so next Monday, I believe that is. So we'll know the exact amount by then. So that'll allow us time to make sure that we get the exact amount of additional appropriation that would be needed for that ordinance at your April 7th meeting. What we're going to do is pay everyone up into the last few applicants, and we're just going to tell them that their money is going to be delayed depending on council action at that meeting of the 7th. So.
That wouldn't be an emergency ordinance, just you can do an appropriation.
Okay. All right. Not an emergency ordinance. All right, let's see. I had several requests last meeting for information from council. One was concerning Kpb Ordinance 2020-45. That is the borough ordinance that rewrote much of their subdivision or their plating code, and both Mr. Bloom and I have reviewed that and don't feel that there are going to be any significant impacts to the city associated with that ordinance. There are several carve-outs in there that do protect the city in case there are things that we don't like. Also, the Bluff project, actually the changes to the boroughs and address ordinance. At Monday's meeting, the Borough Planning Commission approved those changes. As you'll recall, our administration worked with the borough administration and that task force that was working on those changes to get that industrial area of the Kenai River that resides within the city limits to provide an opportunity for reasonable development to occur in that area. Planning Commission on Monday approved that, so they'll be recommending to the Assembly that they adopt that as code. There's no schedule for when the Assembly will hear it yet, but that will be coming up soon. There was some discussion. I had discussions with both Robert Ruffner and the borough to discuss the possibility of getting a carve-out and exclusion of the north shore of the river where the Bluff project goes. After looking at that, we're very confident that the conditional use permit process that's in place will allow permitting to occur without issue. On top of that, at both the Planning Commission meeting and then we've been told at the Assembly hearing itself, there's going to be testimony specifically about our Bluff project and the fact that permitting under 2118 is not going to be an issue. So that will help when we get to that point. I believe that's it there. Mayor Pat Porter contacted me last week. She's actually going to try to kickstart the dog park program. And so she's already started getting a flyer put together. She's got a meeting scheduled for early July, so she's passionate about getting that moving again. And I was very supportive of her efforts, and she seemed really excited about doing that. So she'll be here in July and try to get that project kickstarted as well. Employee to recognize. So actually tonight, this isn't even one of my employees. This is actually one of your employees. Jamie Hines is, it's not me. No, it's not me. Well, it's timely with evaluations coming up, right? No, this is actually Jamie. You know, she literally keeps the wheels from falling off here at City Hall. I mean, she is really amazing. I mean, when you talk about packet preparation, she does, you know, she keeps me focused on packet preparation. She always cuts me a ton of slack too, because I'm always late on everything, but she keeps it going. And the packets that you see in front of us are a large part a result of her attention to detail and her willingness to work with everyone to get those out every other week. You know, beyond that, she was a key player in our marketing programs. We worked through that over the last year. She's been a member of our incident management team through COVID. You know, she has supported multiple departments. You talk about efficiencies that we've got here. Her department is consistently working with departments to figure out ways that they can make their processes more efficient. You know, and finally, she's just a really good person to bounce ideas off of. You guys are lucky to have her employee, and we're lucky to have her as a peer. So, thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Also, Bluff Project. So we're reviewing proposals right now. Actually, we have tapped Councilmember Nackstead to help us out. So there's 3 of us, myself, Scott Curtin, and Councilmember Nackstead are reviewing the proposals. We've spent the last 2 days reviewing them. We've got a meeting tomorrow morning to go over those and go through the scoring matrix and then come up with a recommendation. We received 5 proposals. I will tell you all 5 were excellent. I'm really pleased with what we received. We will be looking to work through negotiations and possibly get that in front of council for your approval for a contract with that firm at your meeting of April 7th. Depends on how negotiations go, and working with the Corps, things, as you know, can slip, but that's our objective, is try to get it in front of you April 7th. Also, one of the other things that I was asked at the last council meeting, and I wanted to actually talk about this last because I wanted some input from council. The Planning Commission seats, I think most of you are probably familiar. The borough came up with an administrative policy last fall that basically said that every 5 years, the city of Kenai does not have a representative on the borough's Planning Commission. This last year, the city of Soldotna didn't have a representative on the Planning Commission. This upcoming year, starting in August, the city is scheduled to not have a representative on the Planning Commission. If the council would like me to, and I would like to work with borough administration to see if we can encourage them to modify that policy, and not only modify that policy, but then take it through the Planning Commission and the Assembly so that it becomes more than just an administrative policy, but actually a legislative policy, or a policy that's adopted by the borough. I think that there are some significant issues with the way that it's crafted right now. Statute actually only allows 4 seats on the borough's Planning Commission to municipalities within the borough. There's 11 seats total, only 4 of them can be municipalities. The problem is, we've got actually 6 municipalities in the borough. We've got Kenai, Soldotna, Seward, Homer, Soldovia, and then also Kachemak City, which was incorporated back in 1961. So there's 6. The current borough policy actually only recognizes 5 of them, so they forgot about Kachemak City, which is a flaw of the policy itself. But with that, my recommendation would be that the 4 seats that are on the Planning Commission consistently are represented by the 4 municipalities that have the largest amount of population pursuant to the latest census. So that's what I would present to the administration, work with them, try to get it to the Planning Commission, the Assembly, if council is supportive of us going down that path. Okay. Okay. And that's it for my report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. This has to do with the budget, you know, because in past years, health insurance has really been a moving target, and sometimes it's run up late in the budget process because there's been a big impact, and finance administration has had to do a lot of work to find a good deal. Are you seeing any problems with increases in health insurance as far as our budget is concerned?
Mr. Ostrander.
Through the mayor, Vice Mayor Malloy, we have not received the preliminary numbers yet. We do anticipate that it could be a difficult year, primarily because they gave us a vacation or a holiday on premiums for one of the 12 months of last year. That holiday goes away which is 1/12 of the cost that we spent last year. Plus, we'll see potential annual increases beyond that. So it could be a relatively significant increase. Both Terry Eubank and Stormy Brown do a great job of negotiating with them and getting that number down, and they will work on that as well. But, you know, we do have the healthcare fund now, which attempts to soften those amounts. So even if we do see an increase above 10%, the amount that we would look to fund, the amount of increase we would show in the budget itself would just be 10% this year. Again, we hope to get that negotiated and get that number down, but we haven't gotten preliminary numbers yet.
Councilmember Winger.
Yes, I have two questions for Mr. Ostrander. Just following up on the dog park with Pat Porter, I think it's great that she wants to come back and take the initiative of that. I just feel that it still falls on us as a body. So what can we do to get that dog park going ahead of July? I kind of feel like starting it in July is kind of starting it at the end of summer. So what can we do to support that? I've been part of that project. My understanding is we failed at grant funding for fencing, and the fencing is the biggest snag to that. So what can we do on an administration level to get this kind of kick-started before she gets here, so that it's well on its way?
Mr. Ostrander.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Winger, you know, when the initial idea of the dog park came up, the approach that we took was that we really wanted this to be a community effort where there wasn't a lot of administrative support. We wanted it to be community driven, similar to what we saw in Soldotna. So the only administrative support that we provided to date has been some almost peripheral support from Bob Frady's associated with that project. And with Mayor Porter coming in, my hope is that re-engages folks and gets that community participation increasing again, so that the city administration doesn't have to engage and turn it into what was completely community driven into something that's driven by the city itself. So, I mean, if council would like me to turn this into a city project, we could do it. But again, the focus was really trying to make it community driven and get that community buy-in rather than having something that their local government did for them.
I completely agree to that. I know they were very driven in their meetings, and they just came to a snag when it came to grants for the fencing. So if that's the true snag that they have, I guess what can we do to help them push this forward where it does still stay community driven, but support them to some benefit as this supports our city?
Mr. Ostrander. Good.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Winger, we could apply for the grant for them, I suppose.
I think that would be a great help. Maybe we can bring Jody Stewart in, since she was really heading this up. Maybe having the discussion ahead of time of where they were at and what they need assistance with. I believe it was just the grant on that.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Winger, I would want direction from all of council to do that, because really the focus has been to let them do it themselves, and I've been very hesitant to engage. So if council wants us to apply for that grant administratively, we certainly will. But I really do want that to be something that the community can be proud that they did it without the help of administration.
Councilmember Naxton.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, Jody Stewart had contacted the Kenai Community Foundation regarding that some time ago, and actually we're holding $800. It's actually up to $900 or so for fencing for the project, but we don't have anybody to give it to because there's no organization out there. There's Jody and maybe there's Tia, but I don't have. There's no. This is kind of an internal thing, but they'd requested to use our 501c3. I'm the president of that to get a grant, which we were agreeable to. We had a few questions of, well, who are you? You know, individuals. You have to have a position, and if somebody needs money, you know, for something that we received, who that goes to. The second one was, if you get a grant, what are the conditions of those grants? Because if you're using that 501c3, you could use somebody else's too. we would be responsible for any kind of reporting. And we never received anything like that. And I think there might have been a third thing. Dr. Pete Hansen is our finance in that program, and he was communicating, and through COVID and whatever, those things never were received on our end. So the grant was not completely applied for at that time. So I think Jody's got something together that she could probably do. I think there's just a few little steps, perhaps. And I kind of like the idea of it being a community program, kind of like Soldotna did. And actually, unless we're getting way off base here, I mean, the Soldotna has a dog park, and the people over there had offered, the people that pushed that to assist too. And so you might reach out to those people too to help with that, because they know dog people are dog people, and some of the avenues where they got funds, they'll have some ideas. And I personally think that keeping it in the community thing and going that way first, just giving it another shot before it comes back to the city doing it would be my preference.
And I think the work that's been done over there, it's been, sort of a, work, request for people that say, we're going to be over here on this day to do, I think we did some clearing, what was that, a year ago, last fall maybe. And then it's sort of, there was a lot of work done that day, and then it just sort of fizzled out where, and maybe it does just take that, something to sort of get re-energized to, motivate people to step. I don't mind going over there and working too and helping out to facilitate that. But obviously, like I said, fencing and those are things that are going to be direct costs to the cities. But it sounds like there could be funding sources for those sorts of things. So.
If I might, one more thing, Pat Porter did call me too the other day, and she is planning on coming up then, but she also pointed out that she can do, she's requested for grants for decades. She says, I can do that anywhere. She can do it from Tyler, Texas, just fine. So just because she's not going to be here till July doesn't mean that she's not completely available, and she's a force to use. So.
So you said you had 2 questions?
Yes, my second question would be about the spruce bark beetle. What are we going to do for a solution on this? We're getting closer into these spring days where people are going to be cutting their properties. As I look through my neighborhood, trees that were good 2 months ago are completely dead now. I drive by the Kenai cemetery. The trees looked good last fall after Bob and them went through and cut a bunch of trees. They're all dead. So we're seeing this definitely spruce bark beetle. I have corresponded with Senator Peter Michicki about this issue as well. And Mr. Michicki would like to know kind of a little bit of our background with this issue. Obviously, we have a long background issue with spruce bark beetles, what the city would like to see done, what we would like to deal with, the issues. Basically wants direction from the cities on how big our problem is, what we would like to do to remify the situation so that he can look at getting funding or additional resources to us to help with this. I would like to see an area at least allocated for spring dumping. We know that gets to be a really big problem. I understand that that's a really large problem, that we could be looking at additional dumping of items. However, spruce bark beetle is going to be a very big issue for a lot of people here within the upcoming months. We see them as dead trees. Those dead trees have value to them. So I know there are people looking for cutting lumber through their sawmills. They're doing raw cut lumber that they're selling to SBS. There was a shortage of lumber last year. I believe Savala had mentioned in our Parks and Recs committee that the borough actually has a plan where they're piling up all of the logs on the new Cooper Landing bypass project. They're piling them all up, and it's a timber sale, so they're paying a couple $100s to come and remove all those logs to the borough. I'm just wondering what type of plan as administration we can come up with to deal with this, an area to put those there, or maybe a process to sell this where we can go onto city areas, private lots, and the dead trees they do have value. They're not just dead, they're standing money that are being sought after by our local sawmills. So I was just wondering if we can come up with some direction on what to do with this spruce bark beetle and work with Senator Michicki's office.
Mr. Ostrander, do we have a personal use policy right now for city-owned properties for spruce bark beetle? Correct.
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, through the mayor, Councilmember Winger, this is a big issue, and it's borough-wide. The last time we had a spruce bark beetle epidemic, there was, I believe, $11 million of federal money that was administered by the borough that removed millions and millions of board feet of spruce bark beetle killed trees. I actually kept anticipating that something like that would happen this time, but there has not been any movement in that direction. We talked about it extensively here at the city. For us, it's almost an overwhelming issue. Providing an area for folks to place slash is something that we can do. There's costs associated with it, of course. We could hire contractors to remove trees from city property. There's costs associated with that as well. While there may be some value to that timber for some folks, the last time we had a large epidemic, there was actually a market for some of those trees. Right now, I think the market you're going to find is very limited. There might be some folks that want to use it for firewood, or possibly some very small lumberyard applications, but the value doesn't seem to be there like it was before. So it's a big issue. It's one I've talked to Bob about multiple times. We do make a small dent in it every year with our Parks and Recreation crew, but it's not enough. The 300 trees that you mentioned in your earlier report, I believe that is just on the golf course. It's much more significant than that if you take all city-owned properties. So I don't have an answer for you. It needs to be a cooperative effort, borough-wide, in my opinion. I don't think it's something that the city should drive. I think it should be a collaborative effort, but I don't have a good answer for you right now, other than to tell you that it's a significant problem that we recognize without any real good answers.
Councilmember Winger, follow up?
Yes. I understand that the ball's kind of been dropped on the borough level of getting something going on this, but it still does affect us on a city level. I would encourage us to work with the borough to press this on a whole issue, because this is something that affects the whole borough. However, it still affects us as a city. So if we could work with Peter Michicki to get funding to address however we may go forth with that, that way there isn't an expense to us. But if the borough chooses to do nothing, we still have to do something. So can we pressure the borough to working with our representatives? If they're not interested, can we work with our representatives for a solution?
Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Winger. We have and we will continue to work for solutions.
Councilmember Glendening?
Thank you. City Manager Ostrander, just circling back, that seems to be a popular term nowadays, circling back to the subdivision overview. I remember we had a concern about a subdivision that was out by Beaver Creek that had a preliminary plat that laid there and festered for 10 years. Okay, and I think this ordinance 2045 cured our concern. In other words, there's a definite timeline and a requirement to move forward with the paper process. Am I directionally correct in that?
Mr. Ostrander?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Glendening, that is my understanding that was resolved. The preliminary plat doesn't survive forever any longer. This necked that time period down. Mr. Bloom might have additional information on that beyond what I have, but that's my understanding is that was resolved.
Councilmember Glendening?
Yes, and then I always have questions, but we're going to have a ribbon cutting at the airport someday. someday soon, or that's a song, someday soon, I go, never mind. I won't sing, but you can sing.
Any other questions of the city manager?
Oh, is there a plaque with this and all of this?
Oh,
I
yeah.
want you to
Well, I
pimp
think
the
it's-
idea a little
I think
bit.
it's being worked on that. We'll get a word
Yeah,
out. Mr.
I'd
Ostrander,
like to
you're
speak
going.
to that, Mayor Gabriel,
Okay.
Councilman Glendinning. Yes, we are going to have a ribbon cutting, and the plaque that is at the airport right now that was, had one council member's name misspelled is currently being redone. There was only one. Nobody noticed. Well, anyways, there's a new one that's been ordered. It was reviewed by 6 people this time. So if it's wrong this time, then you got 6 people directly to blame. I'm one of them. So, but that is going to be done. As far as the ribbon cutting, yes, it is something that we want to get done. No date set yet.
Councilmember Petty?
City manager, do you know if we're gonna have an air show this year, or is that still tentative?
Mr. Ostrander?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Petty, I don't know.
And Mary Bonrant's retiring soon. So, and I think that job's being recruited for right now, right? Yeah. And she was a big driver, but her personal relationships, were a lot that went into behind the scenes of that air show for certain. So, any other questions of the city manager? Councilman Glendinning?
Yeah, how many names are on the plaque?
How many names total on the plaque?
Yes.
I know there's 7 of them in this room that are on the plaque, plus there's 5 or 6 additional ones.
Does it include our newbies?
No, it includes the council members who were on the council when the terminal project was initiated.
Okay.
I was just waiting to, I was going to make it a surprise when they cut the ribbon and the veil fell down out with, Councilmember.
I'm not going to jump out of a cake, Mayor. I'm sorry.
If somebody else wants their name on the plaque, you can remove mine and put somebody else's there if they really, really want it. I don't really care. Not as much as Mr. Glendinning does.
No, it's
But I
not that I
appreciate the
care.
terminal
It was
building.
just a process question. Sometimes you include present council, sometimes not. I've seen other
Who's on it
plaques.
is in the process, but two questions. Well, the airfair normally happens first part of June, so Mary believes at the first or the beginning of May, so I think
Right.
there's kind of a overlap there, so I don't know what's happening. But 2 questions. I was wondering about the Eagle Cam this year. It's about that time where they're going to start laying eggs.
Mr. Ostrander?
Yeah, through the mayor, Councilmember Nackstead. So we ordered a new mic for it, so we can actually have sound this year. That should be arriving this week, and then we're going to install the mic and get things set up, and hopefully just in time for the Eagles to come back. Fingers crossed they actually do.
Second question is kind of far out there. I was looking at some of the monies coming into the state of Alaska, and perhaps the state was getting $100 million, say, for projects. I think that's how it was listed, and so presumably those would be state projects, and we have a big project here, and I'm not sure where that money is going to go that the state's getting, and I'm just kind of plugging in there if there's some way we could get a piece of that for our Bluff project that we've requested money for. If you don't ask, you don't get it, so I don't know exactly what it is, so if you guys could look at that.
Mr. Ostrander?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Nackstead, I actually called Representative Gillum, Representative Carpenter, and Senator Machicki this week to talk specifically about our Bluff project. I was referencing the letter that council sent primarily, but I want to keep it on the forefront of their minds throughout the session so that if any money does happen to fall from the sky, however that might be, that's something that they realize there's significant benefit, not only to the city, but it leverages that state dollar in ways that other capital projects don't. So just keeping it out in front of them, we'll continue to do that.
And hopefully that's a, determining factor when they look at where those monies are spent is where they can leverage, additional funds out, because that's straight into our economy. Any other questions of the city attorney or city manager? Seeing none, we'll go to city attorney, Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I don't have any comments, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you. So, Mr. Bloom, I have a question for you about the next meeting, and it goes back to, you're being a graduate of Gonzaga, and the Zags are in the NC2A tournament. So my question is, at our April 7th meeting, what do you think the chances are that you'll be able to report that they win the national championship?
Mr. Bloom.
Are we talking, are there financial terms to this guess, or is,
No financial terms and no liability issue either. just your succinct opinion on what you see as the percentage chance of you being
100%.
able to report that they win.
100%? If there's no money on it, 100%.
That's all I have.
Any other questions of the city attorney? I'd just like to thank you for the memo you sent out regarding what the subject that came up last meeting regarding compelling commission and committee members to attend meetings. So I appreciate your work on that. Moving to city clerk, Ms. Hines.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, members of council. I've been working on the policy for filling a council vacancy, which came up in December, and that'll be before you at the next meeting. Also, back in September, a new edition was published for Robert's Rules of Order, so I'll be putting forth an ordinance for introduction to amend code regarding that. I was driving, maybe I'm late to the game on this, but I was driving on Bridge Access the other day, and it looks like the Starbucks platform sign is up out at the, so maybe that's already been reported and I missed it, but the last thing, I wasn't going to say anything, but since the manager mentioned, we have been spending some amount of time in the past couple of weeks helping administration develop some automated processes with the Laserfish software that I manage, and you provided funding to for the forms portal, which allows members of the public to, and we've actually been using it even internally to allow form processes to kick off and start of automated processes for the city. So we've been using it a little bit internally, working out, getting it nailed in, and a little staffing change, but we're still working on that. So we've been spending some time doing that too. But that is all I have for my report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you. So I just wanted to use the opportunity of the clerk's report to, comment on a discussion that I was having with the clerk, and this has to do with our agenda. And you may have noticed that the last few meetings, we've stopped putting on the agenda, like an ordinance or resolution, like who sponsors it, and that's no longer read into the record. And so, I kind of like that. I like it because it's informative to the public, but the problem that's sort of come up is there's really no policy for how that happens. So there's sometimes confusion about who the sponsor is, and once in a while maybe there was, like an error and some consternation over this. So, in my discussion with the clerk, she was saying it would be good to have a simple policy relating that. Really, that relates to workflow, so that she would be informed in everything. And so, it kind of sort of arose about 9 years ago. There was a member who wanted that to happen, and it really wasn't discussed at the council, and it happened. And I've really liked it. It's kind of like the change that our colleague, Councilmember Glendenning, suggested about reading the consent agenda into the record. You discussed that with everybody, and everybody liked that, and I kind of like that, change that that we made with that, you know, and how we do our meetings. But anyway, I wanted to, you know, bring that up because I was going to ask the clerk to spend a little time writing some policy for that, and then we could see it on our agenda again, but you all would have input into what the policy is. So, but I didn't want to go ahead and just, you know, myself as one to ask the clerk to do that. I thought I would ask everybody if they thought that was a good idea, and then some other meeting will bring that forward, and then maybe we can see that happen again. So I'm seeing everybody seems to be okay with that. So this isn't an emergency thing, you know. So maybe later in April, our second meeting, we might be able to have something to look at. And I want to say that I really like what you did with the ordinance that's on introduction for electronic participation. You know, I'm glad that you wrote it. You know, if I wrote it, it probably would be a little bit more cumbersome. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
Any other questions of the city clerk? Thank you, Jamie. Seeing none, we'll move to additional public comment. Is there anybody from the general public who'd like to address the council at this time?
On Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature.
Seeing none, we'll move to council comments. Councilmember Glendenning.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yes, well, we had again a fulsome, active discussion tonight, and I'm appreciative of the spirited repartees that we've had. I think it adds to the completeness of our conversation, and I get conversations from those who look in on us that say they do enjoy seeing a little personality exhibited now and then, and it's, at least for my constituents, it's appreciated. I like what we did tonight with the Shop Here All Year. I think that's just a wonderful program. I'm getting overwhelmingly positive feedback on that issue, and it was a really a gold star for the city of Kenai and the council and administration that we are doing that. I'm getting some questions, and I know this is a subject that we're working on, and there will be a time when it will be rolled out. We have land sales. We had 300 and some properties, and I know for various reasons, progressing forward with the final rollout of this program is, and they're real reasons, but we look forward to seeing that at some point in time. And I did talk with Doc Pete about his cabin over there, and he's working on his cabinets a little bit. He has a little bit of touch-up that he wants to do on it, but I think it would be important that maybe we could find a way to get everything put in there before fall rolls in again. You know, he's a little bit older than I am, and I wouldn't look forward to moving cabinets. If there's a way we could maybe help him with some of the logistics of it, that would be wonderful. I think that would be a good move on our part. And I think that holds it. I'm really glad that we're moving forward with our main city initiative, the bluff erosion, and all the ancillary considerations from the borough, the anadromous streams, et cetera, et cetera. And again, thank city manager for going ahead with our representation on the planning commission at the borough. It's vital that we have representation there, especially with the bluff erosion and all the activities that we have in our city. And having said that, just thanks for a good meeting tonight, folks, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Councilmember Petty.
Yes, I too wanted to echo what Mr. Glendenning said about moving forward on this bluff erosion. That is each incremental step as we get closer. I look forward to the ribbon cutting on that project. I'm looking forward into the future with great enthusiasm, and I know that will be a joyous celebration for our whole community. And that ends my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Winger.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the future events and activities that we have going on. Obviously, we have some Parks and Recs activities with the Kite Festival and their Easter egg search. I really have had a lot of people asking about the status of the 4th of July parade. They're just kind of crossing their fingers, hoping that the city is going to go forth with that. I hope we can. I would also like to encourage, I think the air show is great. It's something I did take my kids to 2 years ago. We spent a lot of time with the Coast Guard at that event, and since then, my son has joined the swim team. He's 11. He's very motivated. He wants to either learn to fly or jump out and be a rescue swimmer. So at 9 years old, going to that and spending time with the Coast Guard kind of put him on a path that he wants to be a rescue swimmer with the Coast Guard. So I just wanted to show the value that there is with our youth and our future generations with having that air show. Some other events that are going to be coming up is the Mountain View Elementary Bike Rodeo. And if you're not familiar with this bike rodeo, our Kenai Police Department show up every year and sponsor this. They're a major contributor. They set out a little obstacle course. They teach kids safe biking practices. Safe Kids comes and they fit kids for helmets at that particular event, and families have the option of buying helmets for $5. If you've ever bought a helmet at Walmart, they're $20 to $30 a helmet, and these are fitted to the children, so there's no second guessing from parents. It's a very popular program. They are in need of volunteers for it this year, and they're just having a hard time getting people to do the background checks and do it. I was asked to do it, so I will be going to the Peninsula Borough's website and doing my background, but I thought it would be maybe great for more support from our council to team up an effort with our police department. Maybe we could give a donation of some sort to this to sponsor some helmets to kids that may not be able to afford it. Unfortunately, there are a lot of kids, this is like a first grade event, that don't even know how to ride a bike with training wheels. Oh, some kids, this is their first experience with bikes, bike safety, and we could really get them off on a safe path. So I think that's a great one. And then another one we have coming up are our graduations. Graduation for our seniors are right around the corner. We know that there's going to be some hiccups and some altering of plans for that, but I know a lot of the high schools are already asking for after grad donations. So individually, if that's something that you'd be interested in supporting the Kenai High School and the alternative school and doing a donation for their after grad party, it's a great way to get kids to go do something safe. They're not out on the streets, they're not partying, they're not getting in trouble, they're in a controlled environment. They do a very good job putting these events on. And the more donations, just the better the event will be for our local graduating high school students. And besides that, that's all. One last thing is I'd like to encourage maybe a work session that we can have to do a walkthrough on the Kenai Rec Center before we take over that facility to run it and before budgets. I think it'd be very critical for us to go through, look at our facility, see where we're at. I am concerned with the leak in the roof. They have about a quarter of their gym blocked off with coolers and mats to catch the leaks, which will ruin our gym floor. And then the leaking has gotten so bad there could be a possibility of a mold issue in one of the back rooms. Black mold is something that we're concerned about safety. I believe that a walkthrough before we take over and before we go into budgets on this facility would be needed. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Winger. Yeah, I taken my nephew to that air show several years ago when he was I think he was a sophomore in high school, and he enrolled in flight school right out of high school, college. So I was looking at that as a possible career. So great value in that. Councilman Raskin.
I was going to ask Councilman Winger, when is the rodeo, the bike rodeo? Have they set a date yet?
They haven't set a set date yet. Usually it's the end of April to the beginning part of May, so I'll let council know as soon as they have a set date.
Thank you. I did a bunch of the vouchers for the grocery program, and I'll have comments at our next meeting, but I think I did about 380 of them from the online program, and so I'll have some comments about that. I'm looking forward to the airport cutting and just all the activities, and I know that we're going to have the 4th of July parade. And happy St. Patrick's Day.
I was just going to say, what day is today? Yeah, I'm pretty confident that we will have the 4th of July, if Al Hall has anything to do with it. Vice Mayor Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yeah, I agree with my colleague asking happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. And I want to, again, acknowledge and thank Councilmember Winger and Councilmember Askin for their volunteer services at the Chamber with our programs for the public. Thank you for that extra work that you're doing. Also, regarding cancellation of events, last year we were looking at a return of the salmon kind of like party at the dock in June that got canceled, and so that's something that Councilmember Winger that I'm hoping we'll be able to have this year, but we don't, it remains to be seen what that is. So anyway, maybe we'll hear back about that. Our discussion about the names on plaque gave me a little concern. The library has a lot of names. That's a pretty big plaque. But just think about the bluff erosion project. Oh my God! Kenai loves their mayors, so there'd be at least Mayor Wagoner. So there'd be at least 4. But that's 40 years, or whatever. So maybe it's more than that, and that's just mayors and council members. I mean, it could be 100 days. This could cause some erosion itself, So, just saying. Anyway,
part of the project.
Yeah,
a billboard.
Yeah, good meeting, and thanks everybody.
Thank you, Councilmember Naxon.
Put it down at the beach at the base of the, and it'll help, put some rocks around it it'll help work.
All right, well, that's the engineer. It's good that you're on the review.
Yeah, do it out of a big boulder. Yeah, there you go. I wanted to, I don't think anybody mentioned in their comments, for closing comments, the efficiencies review. I wasn't expecting that tonight, and I do appreciate it. And just looking at the quantitative thing, portion here, the total estimated savings, total is $107,088 with an annual savings of just about $82,000, and that really adds up pretty quickly. So great job. I appreciate the lay down in this case, and I think it's getting close to spring. I actually saw some grass when I walked in here, and it's easy to get that way, but the earliest I normally see geese are about the 1st of April, and typically about the 12th, and here we're the 17th of March, and it never seems like that will ever clear up enough to do that. But spring is coming, and we'll probably be seeing geese in the next 2.5 weeks, even with all this snow. It's gonna go fast. So anyway, I'm looking forward to spring deeply. Thank you.
Yeah, belugas too, pretty quickly. We have no executive sessions, having no pending items before us. This body is adjourned.